History's most pivotal moments often arrive quietly, often masked by the mundane or overshadowed by grand spectacle. They are the subtle shifts, the unspoken tensions, the pregnant pauses that can alter the course of institutions and beliefs. Unnoticed by those absorbed in ceremony and power, lost in the intricate dance of ritual and the weighty responsibilities of leadership. The weight of tradition can sometimes obscure the quiet signals of change. Cardinal Tagle's final warning to the Church, a message delivered not with bombast but with a palpable sense of urgency, was not a thunderous rebuke designed to shake the foundations of St. Peter's, but a sorrowful whisper, a gentle lament echoing through the hallowed halls, a gentle plea born of love and concern, a shepherd's worry for his flock straying from the path. It was a call for introspection, a moment of reckoning. He spoke of a spiritual sickness, a malaise that threatened to erode the very essence of their shared faith, a coldness settling at the heart of the faith, chilling the warmth of compassion and dimming the light of understanding, invisible yet deeply corrosive, like a slow leak undermining a mighty dam. His message was not anger, not a condemnation of past actions, but a careful diagnosis, a precise identification of the ailment plaguing the Church. The rituals and pronouncements were growing hollow, echoing in the vast emptiness of tradition without the resonance of genuine belief. The shepherds drifting from their flock, losing touch with the needs and struggles of those they were sworn to protect. In Rome, tradition reigned, a powerful force shaping every aspect of life within the Vatican walls. The Curia's gears turned, a complex machinery of administration and governance, often slow to adapt to the changing world outside. But Tagle's question lingered, a seed of doubt planted in fertile ground. Was it enough to preserve the institution, to maintain the grandeur and authority of the Church, if mercy was withering, if the very essence of Christ's teachings was fading from view? His words were a subtle tremor, a ripple in the otherwise placid waters of Vatican life. Beneath the Vatican's marble, a challenge to the very foundations upon which the Church was built. A call to look beyond the facade, beyond the opulent displays of power and the rigid adherence to tradition, and see the shadows of doubt and disillusionment that stretched long across the hearts of the faithful. He warned that the Church's lifeblood, the source of its strength and its enduring appeal, must always be mercy, not just order, compassion, not just control. The silence that followed was telling, a heavy, pregnant silence that hung in the air. A quiet that spoke louder than any debate, more powerfully than any pronouncement. It was not politics, not a matter of strategy or maneuvering within the corridors of power, but the human heart at stake, the very souls of those who looked to the Church for guidance and solace. The Church, for a moment, stood at a crossroads, a pivotal juncture in its long and storied history, and chose to say nothing. The silence echoed, leaving the question unanswered, the path forward uncertain. Cardinal Tagle's final sermon resonated with a profound sense of urgency. It was a plea for mercy, not judgment, a heartfelt appeal to the very core of Christian values. He spoke with a passion that moved many, challenging the status quo and urging a shift in perspective. It was a call for the Church to become a field hospital, not a fortress, a place of healing and solace for those wounded by life's battles. He envisioned a Church that actively seeks out those in need, offering comfort and support without reservation. He urged that the doors of the Church be thrown open, inviting all to enter and find refuge within its walls, not as barriers, symbols of exclusion, but as gateways, welcoming portals to faith and understanding for the wounded and the lost, those who have strayed from the path and seek a way back to grace. He wanted the Church to be a beacon of hope for those who felt abandoned. He lamented the obstacles we create, the unnecessary hurdles, the perfection we demand, often pushing people further away from faith. When all people seek is a moment of grace, a simple act of kindness, a glimmer of hope in their darkest hour. His vision was radical welcome, an all-encompassing embrace of humanity in all its imperfections, a Church that runs to the sinner, not away from them, offering guidance and support without judgment. Embraces the outcast, those marginalized and forgotten by society, offering them a sense of belonging and dignity, and binds the wounds of the forgotten, tending to their physical and emotional needs with compassion and care. This was not a new program, a mere set of initiatives, but a demand for spiritual renewal, a call for a fundamental shift in the Church's approach. rooted in Christ's teaching, in the very essence of the gospel message of love, forgiveness, and redemption. Tagle sensed a spiritual winter coming, a time of hardship, division, and a growing disconnect from faith, a coldness that only mercy could thaw, a deep-seated apathy that only compassion could overcome. His warning was urgent, a desperate plea to awaken the church from its slumber and embrace its true mission. Only a tidal wave of compassion could heal the growing fractures, the widening divisions that threatened to tear the church apart. He challenged the church's leaders to serve, not rule, to lead by example, not by decree, to wash feet, not command, to humble themselves before those they serve, following the example of Christ. The call was clear, a resounding summons to action, a call to embrace the true spirit of Christianity. Abandon comfort, step outside the familiar, venture into the peripheries, to the margins of society, and find Christ among the suffering, to recognize his presence in the faces of the poor, the sick, and the marginalized. It was a beautiful, desperate appeal, a heartfelt cry for change, a plea for a more compassionate and inclusive church, and it was met with silence, a deafening silence that spoke volumes about the challenges that lay ahead. One might expect such a plea to spark debate or reflection, but Rome answered with silence, not the silence of prayer, but of closed doors and unopened letters. Tagle's urgent message was quietly set aside, deemed too disruptive for the Vatican's machinery. The doors he begged to open remained shut, bolted by tradition and bureaucracy. The silence was a verdict. A church turning inward, trusting in its own strength and laws. The key of mercy was refused, the opportunity for grace missed. The official response, carry on as before, polish the brass, keep the rituals. But in ignoring the prophet's voice, the church amplified its own emptiness. The silence would soon be filled by crisis, a crisis foretold but not prevented. The unopened letter became a symbol of a future lost. Prophecy is often just clear-eyed observation. Tagle saw the cost of a church that prized rules over relationships. He foresaw empty pews, not as punishment, but as the result of people who no longer felt seen or loved. Without mercy, fractures would widen, ideology would replace theology, and the church would shatter into warring pieces. He warned of a spiritual crisis among priests, burnout and despair as compassion was choked by bureaucracy. Priests would leave, not from loss of faith, but from disillusionment with an unmerciful institution. The silence that greeted his warning allowed the illness to fester. The faithful, longing for a mother's embrace, found only the scrutiny of a magistrate. Tagle's prophecy was not fire and brimstone, but a sad prediction of a slow fading, a great light dimming from within. The oxygen of the church, he said, was mercy. Without it, the soul withers. In the years after Tagle's warning, fractures widened into cracks. Protests grew, lay movements demanded accountability, and priests quietly left. Not for lack of faith, but because their faith demanded more than the institution would give. The unity of the church became fragile, the center could not hold, parishioners chose churches by ideology, creating echo chambers and warring tribes. The question grew louder, was Tagle right? Was this unraveling the cost of ignoring mercy? Into the Vatican's silence rushed anger and despair. By closing its doors to the world's messiness, the church locked itself in with its own demons. The cracks now threatened the whole structure. Even within the Vatican's walls, doubt began to grow. Behind closed doors, officials recalled Tagle's warnings as they faced declining attendance and bitter divisions. There were no public admissions of error, but regret crept in. The official line was strength and tradition, but privately, anxiety replaced denial. The crisis was real and worsening. Whispers focused on managing dissent, not addressing the root disease. Tagle's diagnosis remained unmentionable, creating paralysis. To admit he was right would mean admitting catastrophic failure. The response was tactical, not spiritual. Damage control, not repentance. The men in power looked everywhere for solutions, except in the mirror. The greatest tragedy was not institutional turmoil, but the effect on the faithful. Ordinary people felt abandoned, the church doors locked, their brokenness met with rules, not comfort. Rituals lost meaning, and many drifted away quietly, seeking the faith they remembered, a faith of mercy. The next generation saw only rules and scandals, not mystery or grace. Tagle's warning had been about this. A church without mercy would lose its future. The silence spread from the Vatican to homes and hearts. The cost was not in prestige, but in lost souls and dimmed faith. The shepherd, focused on the sheepfold, failed to notice the flock wandering away. Today, in St. Peter's Square, you can feel the echo of that lost moment. Tagle's voice is now a mournful memory, a ghost haunting the colonnades. The church stands in the landscape he predicted, divided, anxious, and quietly sad. The consequences are etched in the weary faces of the faithful. Something precious was lost, a moment of grace offered and refused. The church must now walk the hard path it chose, its silence answered by the world's indifference. Tagle's plea is a somber reminder of what might have been, a call to humility, service, and love. The ignored voice of the prophet is now the church's conscience, a haunting echo of truth. The legacy of Tagle's warning is not merely confined to dusty archives or within the hallowed halls of history. It's not just an artifact of the past, carefully preserved and studied, but it lives and breathes in the church's present reality, a living testament to the challenges and opportunities that lie before it. It echoes in every decision, every sermon, every act of service. It casts a permanent question mark over this era, forcing introspection and demanding a response. It challenges the status quo and calls for a deeper examination of conscience. Remembering his words is not just an intellectual exercise, but a spiritual necessity, a vital component of navigating the complexities of our time. It serves as a mirror for today's crisis, reflecting back our own shortcomings and illuminating the path toward healing and reconciliation. His call to mercy was not presented as one option among many, a suggestion to be considered and perhaps discarded. It was and remains the only viable path forward, the singular route to genuine renewal and lasting peace. The future, the very destiny of the Church, depends entirely on its willingness to finally listen, to truly hear the message that Tagle so passionately conveyed, to humbly admit error, to acknowledge past failings and present shortcomings with honesty and contrition, and to wholeheartedly embrace mercy, extending forgiveness and compassion to all, without reservation or judgment. The road ahead is steeper now, fraught with challenges and uncertainties that demand courage and resilience. The flock is more scattered, dispersed by doubt, disillusionment, and the storms of the modern world. But despite the difficulties, the path, illuminated by Tagle's wisdom, remains visible. Healing will not come solely from the issuance of decrees or the enforcement of rigid doctrines. True and lasting healing can only spring forth from a genuine conversion of heart, a profound transformation of spirit. The Church must learn to embody compassion in all its actions, extending empathy and understanding to those who are suffering. It must prioritize people above all else, recognizing the inherent dignity and worth of every human being. And it must strive to see Christ in the excluded, in the marginalized, in those whom society has cast aside. Tagle's legacy presents a profound challenge. Will the Church remain a fortress, isolated and impenetrable, clinging to outdated traditions and defending its walls against the outside world, or will it choose to become a field hospital, a place of healing and refuge for the wounded and the broken? The memory of his plea, his unwavering commitment to mercy, offers a sliver of hope, a beacon in the darkness. The future is not yet written in stone. The final chapter remains unwritten. The Church can still choose mercy, can still embrace the transformative power of compassion and forgiveness. It can still run to meet its lost children, welcoming them back into the fold with open arms and unconditional love. The case is not yet closed. The story is still unfolding, and the ending remains to be written. Please subscribe to our channel History Documentary Hub for more insightful videos and intriguing content.